going to read you. It says, post-capitalist politics/praxis means recognizing the myriad of different types of economies other than capitalism, which we participate in our daily lives. This recognition guides us towards also imagining new economies which shift away from protocols of exploitation and domination. The term embodiment simply acknowledges the inseparable intelligence between mind, body, and spirit, or similar to what Joni L. Jones calls bodily knowing. Their goal, this panel's goal, in being a part of a post-capitalist praxis, This panel's goal is being a part of a post-capitalist praxis and thinking about embodiment to engage in projects which value the full humanity of all people by centering the lives of the most marginalized communities. And our first presenter is Messiah Plumley. There he is. And his project is titled, Actually, This Is Why We Play, Basketball is a Transformational and Transgressive Activity, or Leave Us the Fuck Alone, Basketball Beyond Contestation and into Collective Social Life. I will let him tell you about his Obachan and Mother, and his portfolio advisor is Judd Murr, and capstone advisor Susan Harewood.
My Obachan, that's my grandma. Her name is Walker. My mom's name is Akini Yanazaki. That's what's in
Mike, can hear you. You got it. Start over.
Hello? Oh, can you hear that? My Obachan, that's my grandma. Her name is Waka. And my mom's name is Akini. So first, thank you to Susan, a capstone advisor, for helping me get through this presentation process and being patient and supportive. And also to my sister Diane, who's always very likewise being supportive and patient with me and FaceTiming with my nephew and listening to me go through the presentation. And also, if what I say sucks, it's my fault and not Susan or Diane's fault. So make that distinction clear. But if it's great, then so I'm gonna explain two parts of my research. And the first part is kind of situate myself in the conversation that I see happening when cultural studies talks about sports, or something that may be called critical sports studies, in which they are thinking about power arrangements and identity construction and how oppression works through sports and through the bodies participating in sports. And then also simultaneously how people are always kind of resisting those processes and using sports as a site of transformation. And then the second part is just as a piece that I wrote, a meditation that I wrote about a clip that I'll show when we get there. That is like my attempt to get at the feelings behind basketball, and to get at a different way besides the kind of traditional textual analysis. But first I'm going to tell you a couple stories, and this one is about, to demonstrate that conversation, the cultural studies conversation about sports. This is about Charles Oakley and James Dolan. Charles Oakley is an ex-Knick. Is that working? Charles Oakley is an ex-Knick who made a career out of personifying the rough and tough style of play synonymous with early 90s basketball. On February 8th, 2017, Oakley had bought himself tickets and was attending a game between the New York Knicks and Los Angeles Clippers when he became involved in an altercation at Madison Square Garden. Midway through the first quarter, seated a couple rows back from James Dolan, who's the owner of the Knicks, he was surrounded by several security guards and police. They tell Oakley he is to be escorted out of the arena. A disagreement over why and how this is to take place follows. Eventually, they move him towards the exit, and the crowd boos and chants Oakley's name in support of one of the most beloved Knicks in franchise history. Towards the end, towards the exit tunnel, he ends up on the ground, flanked by security guards, telling him he is being uncooperative. They handcuff him and exit him from the building. This all happens in view of about 20,000 fans and their cell phones. Later, it's announced that in addition to being banned from Madison Square Garden, he is also being charged with 3 counts of assault and criminal trespassing. In the following days, Dolan would continue to characterize Oakley in the media as someone who is being inappropriate and abusive, someone who needs help, someone who has a police record, and someone who needs their anger to be managed for the safety of all fans. All of these misrepresentations do the discursive work of signifying the institutional, structural, and cultural forces which specifically target people of African descent by extending historical narratives of black males as inherently aggressive and violent. Dolan never uses any racial descriptors, but instead uses coded language to demonize Oakley by exaggerating the very characteristics that the Knicks once exploited to sell tickets using a particular type of New York attitude. The treatment of Oakley by the Knicks organization, and Dolan in particular, is emblematic of a broader type of anti-black racism which dehumanizes black culture and normalizes white supremacy. This analysis of basketball from critical sports scholars helps contextualize what happened to Oakley as not separate from other incidents of police violence against black communities, but indeed part of a legacy of continued exploitation and perpetual oppression, to borrow the words of the Movement for Black Lives. The case of Oakley is an example of what David J. Leonard and C. Richard King call the commodification and criminalization of black athletes, and can also be understood as a mechanism of racial capitalism, where the business of basketball doesn't exploit racism, but in fact produces racism as its core product. People who think critically about sports also highlight the forms of resistance which are always happening through basketball, such as the cases of Janan Hayes and Bilquis Abdul Qadir. On March 3rd, 2017, Janan Hayes, a junior at a high school in Maryland at the time, was restricted from participating with her teammates in the regional finals game because officials made the decision to enforce a rule which required documented evidence to prove religious reasons for wearing a headscarf. Bilquis Abdul Qadir is the all-time leading scorer in Massachusetts high school basketball. She also played NCAA Division I basketball with the University of Memphis and Indiana State. She was en route to becoming a professional basketball player at the international level, but was denied that opportunity because of a FIBA rule which banned wearing of hijabs during play. She is now an ambassador, activist, and mentor for Muslim women athletes. These two young black Muslim women have been engaged in struggles to freely practice their faith while they also play basketball. Recently, they were both involved in forcing their respective leagues to change the policies restricting the wearing of headscarves or hijabs during games. They are actively challenging discrimination and Islamophobia through basketball while transforming the possibilities within it at the same time. The cases of Oakley, Hayes, and Abdul Qadir represent two strains of thought within academia of critical sports studies: the commodification and criminalization framework, alongside the social justice through sports, or sports as a site of emancipation framework. Naturally, these frameworks intersect and collide with each other in substantial ways. These frameworks are becoming increasingly accepted and lay the foundation for me to be able to take part in the conversation about what other stories or possibilities might be happening in basketball. My own research has been involved with the question, is sports just a site of contradiction, contestation, and transformation? Or might there be more than just oppositional relationships at play? In order to complicate my understanding of these questions, I combine my own lifelong participation and consumption of basketball with the theoretical work and imaginaries of Fred Moten and Stefano Harney, particularly their ideas about studying the undercommons, Bell Hook's work with love and spirituality, and C.L.R. James and Cedric Robinson's anti-colonial theories and analysis of racial capitalism. Combining an autoethnographic approach, media analysis, and performance studies with the frameworks of Black studies, Black feminism, and Black Marxism, I've been seeking moments, histories, and modes of being together on the basketball court, which demonstrate basketball, outside of spectacular zones, has always served as a site for subjugated communities to get together and participate in economies of solidarity and love. I've also been interested in the glitches, or passageways, within the more spectacular commercialized zones, which create temporary situations of being together in ungovernable and post-capitalist ways. These two interactions with basketball as forms of collectivity and as passageways of futurity are part of the project of acknowledging, supporting, and growing of places where, as Fred Moten says, if we start getting together a little bit better, it will enhance our ability to defend ourselves when we get together. And now I'm going to read a piece I wrote about this clip or passageway behind me, which attempts to honor the feelings and histories which are produced as a process through basketball. You don't need the audio on there, the audio's all drawn out. So, this is a little meditation I wrote. Tyshawn is busy breaking basketball, busy diffusing the business of it. He is breaking it by breathing life into it, by reminding dance back into it. His crossover is an evasion, a type of shifting. Jane C. Desmond might call it the kinesthetic synonym of self-defense. A slide forward, a skip across the half court, a glide into an attack. It can also be called study, jumping, fast breaking, suffering, or some convergence of all three. An act in participation of study, a move in the repertoire. For those unconvinced of the potentiality of this dance, the embodied resistance, the futures available, the threat to the hegemony of cultural racism with its gestures, the rest whistle need only remind you of the precedent he is performing. Changing this game and those which have not yet come to pass, his movements are illegible to a cultural drone who only allows themselves to enforce the rules, not knowing the sinister repercussions on his own body. Why does Ref blow the whistle for, and why does he do so demonstrably? Perhaps, as comment section commentators suggest, to protect the confidence of the white boys on the opposing team, who seem both confused and hostile. Or perhaps, as Philip Lamar Cunningham suggests of NBA league administrators, this ref does not fear violence. He fears blacks breaking white imposed laws. Understood this way, ref blows whistle to protect order, to prevent a trance. White people don't dance in a basketball court. Others do. Through the white racial frame, then, the technical foul is a historically accurate call to make, and it wasn't administered just for Tyshawn. Rest in power, Michael Brown. Is this simply a display of difference over similarity? Can we simultaneously feel sameness and difference? Perhaps this is what the glitch represents best. The sanctity of the game is both intertwined with whiteness and suffocated by it. This, of course, is not insignificant, especially if we consider Andrei Lepetki's concept of choreopolitics, understood as a freedom to move freely as an ultimate expression of the political. Tyshawn choreographs counter-hegemonically, contradictory, pleasurable, and liberatory, transgressing the boundaries of acceptable modes of basketball. This, of course, is not insignificant, especially if we consider Gina Caponi-Tiberi's influential work, Jump for Joy, in which she shows how basketball has always already been an integral part of black social life. How basketball is in communion with dance and music, and collectivity and social ritual, an ensemble and a solo. Basketball dances deliver something that makes us us. This crossover is also a mode of call and response, blurring the boundaries separating audience and performers, making it all the more criminal. To dance on them is to exceed them and move beyond the constraints of them. The audience know what we know, which is that these ruptures will return and they will stretch deeper and wider until the whistle in all its fragility will break. This is not ballet, it's improvisation. This is not a distraction, it's a celebration. A gift, not a transaction. It's just barely basketball. Basketball on the periphery of connection. It's an invitation of the feeling of getting to know basketball better, by getting to know oneself better, by getting to know the self-defense of common selflessness better. And I'm just going to close by returning to Gina Caponi-Tiberi, and she says, In play and art, we reconnect with the warmth, sensitivity, nonsense, vitality, and elegance of which human beings are capable under almost any conditions. Play and art are survival technology, essential equipment for living, because the real secret of the game is to make life swing.